So I noticed something in the Wano chapters that could be a pun, but it's also a reference to show that Luffy really does pay attention to very admirable or formidable opponents. Because, and spoilers for Wano, in chapter 1041, which continues into chapter 1042, we see Luffy in Gear 4th Snakeman fighting a hybrid Zoan form Kaido. In fighting him, he uses a technique called Gomu Gomu no Hydra, or Gum Gum Hydra, which is a Gatling-like attack that is an upgrade of the attack Gomu Gomu no Black Mamba, or Gum Gum Black Mamba, in which he's attacking Kaido with a flurry of fists that keep bouncing off of the air and hitting him. This is the technique that Kaido starts to get wise that Luffy doesn't necessarily appear to be a paramecia fruit user, because he mentions that rubber shouldn't even be moving like this, which is a very interesting comment that leads to Gear 5th later on in the future, or at least I think that's a prelude to Gear 5th being a thing in the future, because it's funny that Kaido sees through the weirdness of Luffy's fruit in this moment. However, what is so interesting about Gum Gum Hydra is that there is only one time in the manga in which Luffy is confronted with a Hydra, and that is when he fights the former Warden of Impel Down, Magellan. Of course, Magellan is a paramecia fruit user with the fruit called the Venom fruit, and he can create massive amounts of purple venom. And his go-to attack when fighting Luffy and a variety of people throughout the arc is something called the Hydra. Now, the Hydra in One Piece is not exactly like the Hydra in Greek myth, because the Hydra in Greek myth is more of your run-of-the-mill serpent with a multitude of heads, right? However, the Hydra in One Piece is not a snake, but it is a wyvern. A wyvern is a draconic creature that has at least one set of limbs and that has a pair of wings. The Hydra that Magellan creates is just that, because it does seem to have feet along with a pair of wings, and then it has a multitude of heads. So I find that very interesting within itself, but I say that to say that I do believe the inspiration for Gum Gum Hydra comes from Magellan's Hydra. Now, what makes this situation so funny is that Luffy, in fighting a giant horned man, is referencing another giant horned man, because Magellan, even though he wasn't a Oni like Kaido, he did dress the part of a demon. His costume had wings built into it, and he had a bit of a headdress that resembled horns. So in one instance, you have a man cosplaying as a demon, but then Luffy goes on to fight a man who, for all intents and purposes, is more akin to an actual demon, because he is an Oni, and Kaido, of course, has real horns. It's also very funny too that in both situations you have draconic creatures involved with the attack, because okay, Luffy is referencing a draconic creature in the construct known as the Hydra, or the Hydra created by Magellan's Venom fruit. However, he then goes to attack Kaido, who has the power of the fish fruit model Azure Dragon. In both situations, the creatures in question are draconic, but they aren't true dragons. Like I just mentioned, the Hydra created by Magellan's Venom fruit is a wyvern. It has a set of limbs and a pair of wings. Kaido himself is just a very long drake, as he has 4 limbs in his full dragon state, but he doesn't have any wings. He remains aloft in the air via the weird flame cloud rings around his limbs. So in both situations, you have Horned Man, and in both situations, you have draconic creatures who aren't technically dragons. And I just find that very interesting that Luffy is referencing someone like Magellan, because that is one of the hardest fights he has had to face in the entire series. So it makes sense that somebody like him would leave an impression on him. Also, he has Magellan to thank for his increased resistance to poison, because we see that way earlier in this whole big Yonko saga with the altercation with Caesar Clown in Punk Hazard. So I just found that very interesting that this plays out like it did. But with that being said, if you are enjoying the video so far, click the like button. If you want to see more of this content, I would appreciate if you click the subscribe button, and don't forget to ring that bell so you never miss another video. On top of that, if you could you please hit the hype button? It's very much appreciated. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Waxing.